If there's one thing I've learned from watching Happy Season 2, it is that if you get poisoned, just drink your sorrows away in booze, because it's gonna help you, it's gonna fix you. It's actually the best medicine for that situation. Just remember that. My name is Daidarius and welcome to the review of Happy Season 2. So Happy Season 2 follows Nick Sachs and Happy as they try to live a life sober. In the meantime, Sunny Shine is trying to marketing the Easter and trying to make $1 trillion, that fucking madman. And then you have Haley, who has PTSD of what happened in the first season, and I mean, kind of makes sense. And she doesn't know what's happening to her, and also her mother doesn't know what happened to her. Not that the mother doesn't know what happens to Haley, and the mother doesn't know what's happening to herself. Yes. And then for some reason, this Easter thing is about an old demon trying to get more powerful and take over the world. So now Happy and Sax needs to save the day. It is very, very hard to sum up this season because it is not as clean cut as the first season of Happy, where Nick just has to find his daughter with the help of her imaginary friend Happy. It is not like that in this season. So this is the best I can sum it up without spoiling too much. So why don't we just talk about what I liked about this season? First of all, the acting. The acting is not the best acting out there, but it is one of the most funny acting out there, especially from our main character. He's not as funny as he was in the former season. I will touch upon that later on. But just the way he used facial expression and just his whole body to tell comedy is just something I haven't really noticed or seen in any other series or movies for that matter. Oftentimes the joke is not that he says something funny, it's just that he acts funny in a given situation or acts awkwardly. Or his acting in this given situation doesn't really fit if you see it with real life eyes. But when you look at it through the universe that the series has created, it makes enough sense that it is funny. Does that make sense? All I'm saying that the acting is pretty fucking funny and is also dramatic and convincing when it needs to be. Then there's Happy. Happy is Happy going through an identity crisis in this season. Just it's not easy being the imaginary friend of a hard-boiled ex-cop who's trying to become sober, but he really can't because he's really addicted to alcohol and drugs and all that killing stuff. But just the way Happy is integrated into the story, and especially just how all of these CGI characters are integrated into the scenes, just visually in general, is actually kind of impressive given the fact that this is just a series. It's not in a movie budget, but they actually managed to do a well enough job with these CGI characters that you actually buy it. Which brings me to the humor in this series. The humor in this series is just something on another level than everything else ever out there. I laughed my ass off and out loud so many times throughout this season. I mean, the only time I laughed out more in a season was in the former season. I don't know what it is with this series. It just write comedy gold for the most of the time. And I think it's because it accepts its weirdness, its awkwardness, and just go absolutely insane with it. It doesn't just take it to 100, it takes it to 1,000 or a billion even. This series almost never stopped being awkward or funny or anything in those aspects. It just keeps going. I mean, for the most part, because there's also some dramatic values to this series, or definitely just to this season. There's a lot of times this season actually tries to be dramatic and serious, and when it does it, it actually pulls it off because it is so infrequently. It's so rare that this series actually does it, that when it does it, it throws everything it has at it and you just buy it. Nick Sachs for the most of the time is just a goof. He's just an idiot. He's insane. But then you get to these serious aspects of the season and he becomes this almost real life character who is layered and you understand why he acts the way he acts, but beneath that hardball facade, that's actually a heart of gold. This man is afraid of his daughter because he's is afraid he's not a real good dad, or even just a dad. He doesn't know how to be it. He doesn't know how to care for another person. Now there's this little person that he wants to be with. He wants to be her dad. And sometimes you feel like he's kind of forced to be this father figure, but then other times throughout the season, you get a glimpse on what really matters to him, and you understand why he acts the way he does. And just the fact that this series dares to be dramatic in certain scenes to enrichen its characters and just enrichen the world in general, it's just something I appreciate. Now, with that being said, this season actually has some issues, unfortunately. First of all, it's not as funny as the first season. And the reason for that is that now Nick is sober. And you kind of realize that the reason that he was so funny in the first season was because he was this psychotic asshole who was drunk or high of other things all the time. He actually murdered people in cold blood because he needed to, or it benefited him in the given situation. Whereas here, he's trying to be a good father figure. He cannot drink, he cannot take drugs, and he cannot kill people for the first part of the season. When you take those aspects away, then you realize that he's not as funny. He doesn't get into as many funny scenes as we're used to. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate that aspect of him, that we get to see that side of him, but nevertheless, it's not the funniest side of him. So even though that he's get more depths, I kind of want the old Nick back. If that old Nick ever comes back, well, we have to see. But even though that he's not as funny as he used to be, he's still pretty fucking funny. I mean, just in the first episode, he has promised Happy and also Haley that he won't murder anyone. And then he gets himself thrown into a situation where if he needs to get out of life, he kind of have to murder people. He kind of has to unlive them. So what he does is that he does his absolute best to just incapacitate them and then, make sure that they don't go anywhere. Unfortunately, they are such complete idiots that every time he does something and trying to be non-lethal, actually kind of ends up killing them. I'm not gonna spoil how that happens, but just trust me, that is one of the funniest scenes in this series. Is it's not funny then when you have a character murdering people, but all I'm saying is it's kind of funny when you have a character who's murdering people. Moving on. That was kind of weird. Another thing I didn't appreciate about this season is it is not as laser focused as the former one. You kind of feel like you're drifting around in the first part of this season before the season actually makes up his mind and goes, this is the direction I want to go. That doesn't mean that we have a lot of wasted scenes. It just means that we are kind of fumbling in the dark in the first half of the season before that me personally figure out what this season was trying to tell, what kind of story this season was trying to tell. So all in all, this season is not as good as the former season, but fortunately this season actually have a cameo of Jeff Goldblum. I'm not gonna say what it is, but let's just say it is epic. And it fits Goldblum pretty well. Especially given the fact that he is in this weird series. So, I mean, it's just perfect. So what you get out of this season is you're going to get some funny and creative acting and just general good acting overall. You're going to have some kind of uneven pacing in the beginning. It just doesn't really know what to do. And then later on, it becomes more focused. You're going to have one of the most hilarious scenes you have ever watched on television ever before. You're going to have some impressive visuals and creative visuals throughout this season. Unfortunately, this season is less funny than the former season. But all in all, this is still one of the most creative, weird, and funniest series I have ever watched. And I will say that Happy Season 2, it is worth watching and worth buying on Blu-ray. I just can't wait for season 3. I want more Nick Sachs. Actually, I could just go with the series with only Nick Sachs and Happy just doing stuff. Just doing stuff in general because it's just comedy gold. But anyway, Happy Season 2. Have you seen it? What do you think about it? And what is your favorite comedy series of all time? Me, personally, it's still Happy. But whatever you think, comment below me your thoughts. And so as until I see you in the next video. Remember to stay awesome. Bye! Does Nick Sachs has a brother called Nick Tuba? Nick Trumpet?